24 hours after ECOWAS activated its standby force in a bid to restore democracy in Niger, the minority in parliament is mounting renewed resistance to the use of force, citing humanitarian and economic implications.
Before you deploy a force, be able to understand that it comes with financial strain, it comes with humanitarian pressure. Are we prepared with the financial strain, considering our economies in West Africa? Are we prepared for the humanitarian catastrophe that will befall us if we should go ahead?
Well, there's more unfolding tonight as the sub-regional body ECOWAS is warning Ghanaian MPs opposing the military action in Niger that the sub-region risk more coup d'etats if they inhibit President Akufo-Addo from going ahead with his plans to contribute troops.
To say that they are not going to allow it, that is a matter for them. But that everybody has to ask themselves.
Okay.
If we are not able to reverse Niger, which is going to be the next domino to fall.
And top story, as always, is brought to you by Vodafone. Further together. My name is Blessed Sugai. Tonight, the minority in parliament is mounting renewed resistance to the use of force in restoring constitutional order in the Republic of Niger, citing humanitarian and economic implications on the country. Now, the sub-regional body ECOWAS yesterday ordered the activation of its standby force after its ultimatum to Niger's military junta elapsed last Sunday. They have been raising concerns together with other experts about the use of force to restore democracy in the West African nation after its president, Mohamed Bazoum, was ousted last month. Well, earlier, ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, Samuel Okujeto-Ablakwa, indicated that President Akufo-Addo's engagement on the matter must be subjected to parliamentary scrutiny. Listen.
The talk of violence and all of that. And you see, people are even beginning to raise questions about fairness and discrimination and all of that. Why was that not done in Guinea? Why was that not done in Mali? Why was that not done in Burkina Faso? So let's have cool heads, take control, and let us opt for a democratic path moving forward. And I must insist that these matters should be brought to the Ghanaian parliament. Look, even though we are on recess, we can have, this is such an important matter that the speaker will hurriedly convene an emergency session. Every country, look, even worse in other countries, you hear House of Commons meeting on the kind of support they should send, the British should send to Ukraine. The US Congress has met time without number to pass resolutions on the kind of support to send to Ukraine, even though it is really not their war and they are only supporting as allies. So how is it that in Ghana, our president, without any parliamentary resolution, can be talking about deploying troops, military intervention, and our parliament is not playing any role at all? No committee has been engaged. The plenary has not debated these matters. Please, we can't go out there lecturing others on democracy when we are not following democratic tenets back home. I hope that the heads of state will rather opt for further diplomatic exchanges. There has to be negotiation.
So that's Samuel Okujeto-Ablakwa speaking to me and explaining what the minority position is, which we'll explore shortly. But tonight, there's more unfolding, and we're getting to learn more about President Akufo-Addo's direct involvement and his position on the matter of contributing Ghanaian troops and also deploying a force by the sub-regional body ECOWAS. Well, the Commissioner of Political Affairs, Peace and Security of the ECOWAS Commission, Ambassador Abdel Fattah Musa, is warning Ghanaian MPs opposing the military action in Niger. His argument is that the SAP region risk more coup d'etats if they inhibit President Akufo-Addo from going ahead with his plans to contribute troops.
When West Africa when ECOWAS was deploying to Liberia, deploying to Sierra Leone, it wasn't unanimous in the region. There were even member states who acted against the interest. It was a coalition of the willing. There are countries that are already pledging troops right now for it,
including Ghana.
There is going to be a planning meeting very soon.
So Ghana has not committed, right? Because obviously the president does not support it.
Ghana was one of the strongest advocates of military action in Niger, just because of the attitude of the authorities there. And as you know, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo is one of the leaders in West Africa who spent a lot of their time fighting dictatorships, military and others. Whether you are talking about the Komipreko demonstrations and whatnot, President Akufo-Addo was very much central to them. So for him, coups are anathema. And he demonstrated, his resolve to make sure that there are no coups.
Okay, finally,
so if the parliament is going to handicap him, to say that they are not going to allow it, that is a matter for them. But that everybody has to ask themselves.
Okay.
If we are not able to reverse Niger, which is going to be the next domino to fall, there are already fissures in many countries in the region. Is military intervention, the military replacing civilian rulers, is it the solution we are seeking? That we are falling one after the other. At some point, we need to put an end to it. Democracy may not be perfect. There are governance deficits in the region.
I see.
But listen, the region has made progress.
And my interaction there with the ECOWAS commissioner in charge of political affairs, peace and security, just hours upon coming on air. And there's more in that interaction, also revealing how ECOWAS is simply dealing with its protocol and not being a pawn for any other external force. We'll explore that shortly, but I want to tell you about individuals helping us during the discussion. A member of parliament also serving on the Defense and Interior Committee, Peter Tubu, also former supporter of the Ghana Police Service, is joining us on the telephone lines. Then we have a security analyst working as a consultant to the African Union, Colonel Festus Abuaje, retired, who's also joining us on the telephone lines now. Let me start off with you, Colonel, since you have some engagements coming up shortly. The revelation, at least we know now, is that President Akufo-Addo is one of the strong advocates for the deployment of troops. And we know what the implication will be, first of all, for the Ghana Armed Forces and the entire region. Looking at the fallouts from yesterday's meeting, do you have a second thought about being cautious on the deployment of this military force?
Well, I've always been cautious about the use of force under international law. And we make reference to ECOMOG because in that era, we're largely under military rule. We didn't have democratic legislatures. So Abacha and Rawlings could just decide that we were going. So we went. Now, this is a different era. And in this era, we should be dealing or be seen to be dealing with the root causes of coups. Because I'm telling you that it doesn't matter whether we just walk into Niger and are successful. If we don't address the root causes, we will have more occasions to launch military invasions. But there are risks. And I think we may not be fully applying our minds to the risks. The statement that ECOWAS issued yesterday, for me, is too terse, is short on the facts and the realities of the security situation in West Africa. If you have a country that is already under threat of insurgency, and terrorism. You don't add to that mix or equation by destabilizing the center of power with an external invasion. You see, and if care is not taken, and the CNSP is unhinged in Niger without a substantive, credible government in Niger, the force that goes in will end up having to run up north to the tri-border area to fight the insurgency. And that's not going to be possible. Look, our countries are hemorrhaging economically. So I've been wondering among us, if Ghana decides that we are going to send troops, let's say a battalion, like Cote d'Ivoire is saying 1,100, where are the vehicles? And where is the maintenance support? Where is the fuel support? Where is the food? Where is the medical support?
Colonel, I'm sorry for cutting through, but where does that coming now, knowing that the West Africa sub-region is facing what some experts are describing as a crisis? We are in a crisis, you agree?
We are not in a crisis. I heard the speaker before me, not Ambassador Musa Fatal, but I think it was Honorable Ablako. You see, when next door, Cote d'Ivoire, was messing up with this constitution in order to create a basis for Ouattara to extend his stay, what did ECOWAS do? We didn't do anything. Fast forward, come to 2015, Togo, when again foreign Nyasimbe, engineered the constitution in order to wash away the terms of his father that he had served, and then to continue, ECOWAS arrived at a compromise with him. When Alpha Conde in Guinea was also misbehaving, ECOWAS didn't do anything. So if you don't address the root causes around constitutional re-engineering and elections, among others, before we come to security, you cannot think that each time there is a military coup in any member state, you're going to use force. And let me ask our audiences. Yes, we're going to Niger. We couldn't go to Cote d'Ivoire. Why? And we should ask ourselves, why didn't we even raise a finger when in Senegal, Macky Sall was also attempting to re-engineer the constitution? And if it happens in Nigeria, are we going to go there? These are fundamental questions that we need to ask. And there are other dynamics. See, this ECOWAS communique yesterday is already short on the details of a mandate. But ECOWAS under international law cannot invade any country. Because technically speaking, Niger has not aggressed any member state of ECOWAS. So we need to go to the Security Council. There might be attempts for some people to avoid going to New York, but we need to go. Because under international law, it's only the Security Council that can sanction this kind of military intervention. And when we get there, in all likelihood, Russia might veto it. Because the proviso is that this kind of intervention requires 9 out of the 15 members to support the resolution. And all 5 permanent members of the Security Council must be part of the 9. So if Russia vetoes, that is the end of the ECOWAS campaign. Before we even talk about China, which is likely to abstain. You see, all of this will put additional pressure on ECOWAS to find a mediated outcome in Niger. So when you calculate all of these, you put more emphasis on diplomacy rather than be saber-rattling that you are going to go to Niger.
Okay, so you are opting for diplomacy, but then ECOWAS is explaining in their communique, which forms part of the fallouts from yesterday's engagements, that, and the word they use there is, quote, repel. They claim that General Abdul Salami, together with the Sultan of Sokoto, who were all deployed, were repelled by the military regime in Niger. That's been the concern. But let's also hear from Peter Tobo, who's ranking on the Defense and Interior Committee, because you've been asked as members of the minority side of the House not to impede President Akufo-Addo's decision. Now we know what his decision is. He says he's going in, supporting that decision to contribute troops and to restore constitutional order in the Republic of Niger?
Blessed, thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute to this very important debate. Let me say good evening to Colonel Retired Festus Abuaji, my senior brother, of whom I'm well pleased all the time when we talk about security. What happened yesterday, in my own understanding, activating the ECOWAS standby force does not necessarily mean the standby force will be deployed. Activating the ECOWAS standby force is a sign of deterrence to the junta in Niger that there's a possibility of the use of force. And as Colonel Festu has outlined, the power to use force internationally comes under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. And the Chapter 7 of UN Charter can only be activated if the UN Security Council endorses that. And of course, if you go to the UN Security Council today, the fact that they are trying to take themselves out of their colonial master France and they are looking for a new marriage with Russia, that will tell you Russia is very likely to veto that mandate. And if Russia vetoes that mandate, that is the end of the story. The second issue is, if you are talking about deploying in such volatile environment where Mali and Burkina Faso are willing to support their brother Niger and they are prepared for open war, ask yourself, do you know the budget? Do you have the funding to go into that kind of war? Is it sustainable? Can you fight that war for a year?
So is that where you
to
intend to hold the balls of the president and to say, well, you can't go in there?
Hello?
And I'm asking based on the aspect that you're raising about the financial arrangements, which will definitely come before your committee in Parliament. Is that where you're seeking to hold the balls of the president on this, to say that he cannot go to Niger?
No, we are actually looking at different points. One, financial, of course, but the second issue is the possibility of a humanitarian catastrophe. We have not gone to Niger, but if you get to know the number of Zabarama people in Ghana already illegally, it will shock you. So if you strike in Niger and Niger is no longer a place habitable enough for human beings, the human traffic will be directed downwards. But what is more dangerous, my brother, what is more dangerous is the fact that this can actually be a decoy by a terrorist. As our attention goes to Niger and uphill Sahel, our back will be opened. And many of these terrorists are just striving very hard to get access to the sea. So if we concentrate on fighting Niger, we should be very careful, just like football. As you attack, be careful with your back, or else your defense will be hollow. And all of a sudden,
but if you look at North, it's not helping the matters. You have Burkina Faso right on top of us, and Burkina Faso has made its intention clear as to how it would deal with this military team in Niger. They are absolutely going to support what's happening in Niger right now, given the fact that they are, in fact, threatening to respond with equal measure in terms of force. So if you have our president supporting this, as we are learning from the meetings that happened in Abuja last night or yesterday, how do you intend that we can avoid this? Because the president is resolute on using the military. You in Parliament say we need to find a way out. How do we resolve this?
We are speaking diplomatic language. Of course, the president at the ECOWAS heads of state meeting, the ECOWAS authority meeting, I am quite sure they will be thinking alike, thinking as an authority to deal with a brother who is in trouble. And of course, the president openly will support that. But come to the details. When he comes back home, we will need to have the fine details. What is the implication of Ghana sending our army to support this kind of thing? What is the economic implication? What is the political implication? What is the humanitarian implication? If you're able to justify all that and you tell us that, oh yes, there is funding enough from the ECOWAS level to fund this, and the military themselves come to say, you see, we understand military business more than you civilians. We are ready to go, and that is the only way we can sustain security in West Africa. And they are so convincing. Why not? But until then, I think that all of us watching it, nobody is giving
apologies,
any
but you're not
you're
not a stranger in this field. You yourself, you have some considerable background in matters of security. Would it be safe if the financial box is checked for ECOWAS to go into Niger as we speak?
I would want to listen to the Chief of Defense Staff. What are the technical reasons he thinks that we can support that? If it's convincing, and in fact, it is very positive for Ghana's development and Ghana's peace and security, we will look at it. But until then, let's not jump the gun. Let's be careful.
So the point is your personal opinion and assessment on what's happening so far.
My personal opinion is the fact that it is too early in the morning to be thinking about a peace enforcement. Too early.
I see. The president now has given his post-chance, we understand, through ECOWAS, which then comes back to you as MPs in the House. If anything regarding finances comes before you, and this is going to be funded by an external party, would you support that? Because the fear is, by some experts, that the Sahel region is becoming a theater or a playground for the external forces or, the superpowers. Are you equally concerned about this? And if the financing is going to come from outside of the region, will you support it?
Anytime you are waging a war and finances are easily found to support it, be careful with who is funding. These are all complicated geopolitics that we need to understand. If the armed forces of Ghana decides that they will listen to the president and engage in this war, they will need to sound very convincing about the military strategy, the implication for our own security, because their major purpose, their original purpose is to maintain the sovereignty of this country, to defend the sovereignty of this country. If they want to go international, and we ask ourselves, of what benefit is it going to Niger that will bring to Ghana? So if they're able to analyze all these things for us, we'll look at it. But I have an open mind, but as I speak today, the facts available do not support any military intervention. Activating the ECOWAS standby force, it is a military duty. It is just normal to put yourself in a posture of deterrence. The day that they will decide that they want to deploy the Ghana armed forces to join their colleagues to go to Niger, I'm sure that we will have to look at it again and see whether it is important to approve of that. For now, I have no clear idea as to whether that is possible.
Okay, we'll see about that. Grateful for your time. He's a member of the Defense and Interior Committee, Peter Lonchini Tobo. So what's the mandate of President Akufo-Addo given the constitution that we have? Joining us now is Associate Professor of Law at the University of Ghana and Human Rights Advocate, a PhD, who's joining us to share his thoughts on this. And you've just heard from one of the members of the minority there indicating that, well, there's no need for committing our troops, but if the minority insists and it becomes necessary to commit our troops to the standby force, will it require any form of parliamentary approval or scrutiny?
Thank you for having me. Excuse me. I've listened to the discussion and the debate going on. I would not want to restrict myself to the constitution per se, but we have to look at the international law dynamics at play here. First of all, the decision taken by the military leaders to organize the coup in itself is a violation of international law. And the military regime did that, which therefore violates the self-determination of the people of Niger. As we speak now, we are not sure which government is really in power. We have the de jure government, that's the government that by law is the government of Niger, which is led by Bazoum, and then the de facto government, which is led by the military. In international law, there is what we call recognition of governments. At this moment, ECOWAS has given collective recognition to the Bazoum government. And so in the eyes of ECOWAS, Bazoum is still in power. And so it can listen to what Bazoum says and act on that. Now, ECOWAS also has a protocol on good governance, democracy and good governance. And it expresses zero tolerance for coup d'etat. So in that respect, backed by the AU, which also recognizes or adopts a non-indifference approach, in other words, the right to intervene in case of any disturbances, which includes such a situation as a coup d'etat. The AU, with the backing of ECOWAS, could go into Niger. But the question then is, are we adopting, and there have been also situations where the Security Council, even though there's a call that it should go to the Security Council for authorization, there have been situations where such interventions have taken place before later on the Security Council would give it ex post facto rationalization and therefore retroactively recognize such an intervention. Having said all that, the situation in the humanitarian situation in the country has already started deteriorating. And looking at the dynamics in general, the solution is not a military solution. The solution is a political solution. And so coming down to the Constitution of Ghana, directly, if it is just about going to restore a democratic order in the country, it doesn't call for parliamentary approval. But in the name of ensuring that we go with one voice to resolve the issue, it has to go to Parliament for a discussion. At least the Committee on Defense should have a say in this, because it involves a whole lot of dynamics, where you talk about logistics, you talk about the number of troops that can be stationed there, the already volatile situation in the country, in the West Africa sub-region. It calls for some form of consensus building on this issue. But strictly speaking, the president can say that we are committing troops in the name of ECOWAS because we are a member of ECOWAS, and ECOWAS decisions bind us. We are a member of AU decisions bind us. And according to Article 40 of our Constitution, our international relations should recognize the values and principles embodied in the instruments of these regional organizations and sub-regional organizations. And so we could do that, but on the looking at the dynamics on the ground, we should dictate how we act. It will not be a very prudent decision to go to the ground now and try to remove the military from power. That is what I would say in regards to
I see. And in fact, there are other human rights concerns, including displacement of people. In fact, as we speak, there are so many Ghanaians in Niger, and some who have told us that they've been threatened of reprisals, possible ones, if indeed countries such as Ghana and other West African countries wage war, as they are terming it, on Niger. We'll be keeping our eyes on that. Thank you for joining the conversation, Associate Professor of Law at the University of Ghana, and a human rights advocate, a PhD. It's here sharing his thoughts with us. They're wrapping up Top Story with me, Blessed Sugan. We have more stories for you at myjoyonline.com, but in just the next minute, Ghana Connect is starting, and we're focusing much more on the humanitarian crisis that may come with the deployment of this troop in Tunisia. And Kwaku Asante will be on Ghana Connect. Kwaku, what are we to expect?
Exactly. We want to ask the ordinary Ghanaian what they think about a possible military intervention in Guinea. Do they support the deployment of Ghanaian troops? And also ask the question about whether or not they believe there's a democratic recession in Africa. That's some good
It's actually a very dire situation, looking at the complications of deploying a military into a country that now has some sort of backing from paramilitary groups such as the Wagner forces. Concerns are emerging over how this may become, some sort of
already. I don't know the authenticity, but I've seen
within our region.
Story about Wagner already deploying.
That's the concern emerging, and we are all, especially as journalists, expecting some statement from the Foreign Affairs Ministry detailing what will be the next step for our citizens or our nationals living in Niger, because some of them are concerns about reprisals. Now ECOWAS says it is activating that military force. What's the position of the ministry? What do they intend to do? Because we're paying people who are serving in the mission there in Niger. We need to hear on what the next steps are, knowing that we're going with the military action. So that's the concern right now, Kwaku. And I'm sure that more of your guests will be sharing their thoughts on that in the next minute.
Definitely.
Hey, you ever buy credits where you